Have you ever wondered how one man could conquer nearly a third of the world? Genghis Khan wasn't just a military genius, he was a master of brutal tactics that left his enemies terrified and broken. In this video, we're diving into the ruthless methods Khan used to expand his empire, from psychological warfare to mass destruction. Each example is more terrifying than the last, and by the end, you'll understand why he was one of the most feared leaders in history. Stick around, because towards the end, we're going to reveal one of the most infamous acts of retribution Genghis Khan ever carried out, a moment that changed the course of history forever. Chapter 1. The Rise of Genghis Khan's Empire. Imagine ruling over an empire so vast it spanned from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. Genghis Khan achieved this monumental feat, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most feared and ruthless conquerors in history. His name alone struck terror into the hearts of enemies, not just because of his military strategies, but because of the brutal tactics he used to dismantle entire civilizations. From obliterating entire cities to using extreme psychological warfare, Genghis Khan mastered the art of conquest through fear and force. His reign wasn't just about defeating enemies, it was about ensuring they would never rise again. His overwhelming success was built on more than just battlefield victories. It was built on the total annihilation of opposition. Chapter 2. The Power of Psychological Warfare. Genghis Khan wasn't just a warrior. He was a master strategist who knew that sometimes the sharpest weapon was fear itself. His conquests were fueled not only by military might, but by psychological warfare, a tactic that often broke the enemy's will to fight long before any battle began. By carefully crafting a terrifying reputation and spreading stories of his merciless massacres, Genghis Khan turned fear into his most effective weapon. Let's dive deeper into this tactic and explore some chilling examples. One of the first things Genghis Khan understood was that fear could cripple an enemy's defenses faster than any army. Before launching an attack, he would often send messengers ahead to relay stories of the brutal destruction the Mongols had inflicted on previous towns. These tales, whether exaggerated or completely true, painted a horrifying picture of what would happen if the town resisted. The Mongols made sure that word of their conquests spread quickly, leaving a trail of terrified cities in their wake. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of Genghis Khan's psychological warfare can be seen in his assault on the Khwarezmian Empire. Before the Mongols even arrived, the Khwarezmians had heard terrifying stories about what had happened to those who resisted. Some cities hearing these accounts surrendered without a fight, hoping to spare their citizens from total destruction. This, of course, was part of Genghis Khan's plan: to win as many battles as possible with minimal bloodshed on his side by letting fear do the work. A perfect example of this tactic is the massacre at the city of Nishapur in present-day Iran. In 1221, Genghis Khan's son-in-law Tokhchar was killed in battle near the city. Enraged by the loss, Genghis Khan ordered the complete annihilation of Nishapur. The Mongol forces decimated the population, reportedly killing every man, woman, and child. Historical accounts claim that as many as 1.7 million people were slaughtered, although this number is likely exaggerated. What's crucial is that the story of Nishapur's annihilation spread like wildfire throughout Central Asia, cementing Genghis Khan's reputation as a conqueror who showed no mercy. This reputation caused a ripple effect throughout the region. Cities would surrender without a single sword being drawn, knowing that defiance meant certain destruction. Some accounts suggest that Genghis Khan even deliberately let a few survivors escape from his massacres, ensuring that they would spread tales of horror to neighboring towns. These survivors, often traumatized and broken, would tell of entire populations being wiped out, instilling a paralyzing fear in others. This approach worked so effectively because it wasn't just the prospect of death that frightened Genghis Khan's enemies. It was the totality of his destruction. Genghis Khan didn't just kill soldiers. He wiped out entire communities, leaving behind empty ruins where vibrant cities once stood. The Mongol army would systematically destroy infrastructure, burn crops, and slaughter livestock, ensuring that even if survivors fled, they would have no resources left to rebuild their lives. In addition to mass killings, the Mongols employed various forms of torture to break the will of those who resisted. Some captured enemies were boiled alive, others were crushed beneath wooden platforms. The The sheer brutality of these methods ensured that the stories carried by refugees were horrifying enough to encourage surrender. It wasn't just military commanders who took note of these tactics. Civilians, too, came to understand that resistance was futile. In many cases, cities and towns would send emissaries to the Mongol camp, offering tribute and submission long before the Mongols arrived. This meant that Genghis Khan could expand his empire with little actual combat in some regions, simply by leveraging his fearsome reputation. Of course, psychological warfare also extended to the battlefield. Genghis Khan was known for his clever use of deception. For example, during sieges, the Mongols would sometimes use dummies on horseback to make their army appear larger than it actually was. They would also light extra campfires at night, creating the illusion of overwhelming numbers. These tactics unnerved enemy forces, leading them to make strategic mistakes or abandon their positions altogether. Genghis Khan's use of psychological warfare is one of the most defining aspects of his military strategy. By spreading fear and amplifying stories of brutality, he managed to win battles without ever drawing his sword. The massacre at Nishapur is just one of many examples where his terrifying reputation preceded him, allowing him to conquer vast territories with minimal resistance. But as we'll see later in the video, Genghis Khan's tactics didn't end there. There were even more brutal strategies that cemented his place as one of history's most feared rulers. Chapter 3. The Feigned Retreat. Genghis Khan was not only a master of psychological warfare, but also a brilliant tactician on the battlefield. One of his most famous tactics was the Feigned Retreat, a clever maneuver that played on the enemy's instincts and led them into devastating traps. This tactic showcased the Mongol army's exceptional discipline and coordination, enabling them to turn the tide of battle in their favor time and again. At its core, the Feigned Retreat involved a seemingly chaotic withdrawal by the Mongol forces. As they appeared to flee, it baited their enemies into pursuing them, leading them into a vulnerable position. The Mongols, who had trained extensively in the art of horseback archery and were known for their agility, would then regroup and launch a counterattack, catching their enemies off guard. This tactic allowed them to defeat larger forces and change the course of battles through sheer cunning. One of the most notable instances of the Feigned Retreat occurred during the Battle of Samarkand against the Khwarezmian Empire in 1220. As the Mongol forces approached the city of Samarkand, they faced a substantial Khwarezmian army. Initially, the Mongol troops engaged in skirmishes, feigning weakness and a desire to retreat. The Khwarezmians, confident in their numbers, believed they could overpower the Mongols and were lured into the open, chasing after what they thought was a fleeing enemy. The Mongols executed the Feigned Retreat flawlessly. As the Khwarezmian soldiers pursued them, the Mongols suddenly turned around and re-engaged, revealing their hidden troops. The disciplined Mongol cavalry, with their expert archers, unleashed a torrent of arrows on the unsuspecting Khwarezmians, who found themselves in disarray. The Khwarezmian forces quickly realized they had fallen into a trap, but it was too late. The Mongols had already regrouped, encircling their opponents and inflicting severe casualties. This tactic was not only effective in battle, but also served to build the Mongol legend. Stories of Genghis Khan's clever strategies spread quickly, further fueling the fear and respect that surrounded his name. The psychological impact of such tactics was immense. Future adversaries would be left wary of the Mongols' capabilities, leading many to surrender without a fight in subsequent encounters. The success of the Feigned Retreat also relied on the Mongol army's extraordinary training and mobility. Genghis Khan's forces were comprised mainly of skilled horsemen who could maneuver swiftly across the battlefield. This mobility was crucial for executing the Feigned Retreat effectively. The Mongols would ride away at speed, creating the illusion of a disorderly escape. However, this withdrawal was entirely calculated, designed to create a sense of overconfidence among their pursuers. The Battle of Samarkand exemplified the devastating effects of the Feigned Retreat. While the Khwarezmian forces were left scrambling and exposed, the Mongols capitalized on their confusion, turning what could have been a defeat into a resounding victory. The Khwarezmians suffered not only from heavy losses, but also from the humiliation of being outsmarted on the battlefield. In summary, the Feigned Retreat was a testament to Genghis Khan's military genius. It demonstrated that intelligence and strategy could often outweigh sheer numbers on the battlefield. This tactic, combined with the Mongol army's skill and discipline, allowed Genghis Khan to conquer vast territories and instill a sense of fear that would resonate throughout history. The legacy of his tactics, particularly the Feigned Retreat, serves as a reminder that the art of war is not solely about brute strength, but also about cunning, strategy, and psychological warfare. Chapter 4. Mass Slaughter and Terror as Control. Genghis Khan's reign as a conqueror was marked not just by brilliant tactics on the battlefield, but also by a chilling strategy of mass slaughter that served to instill fear and establish control over his vast empire. This brutal approach was not simply a reflection of cruelty, it was a calculated method to eliminate potential uprisings and ensure submission from the populations he conquered. Genghis Khan understood that to maintain order and prevent rebellion, fear must be a constant presence in the minds of the people. One of the most notorious examples of this strategy occurred in the city of Merv in 1221. After Genghis Khan's forces laid siege to Merv, they executed an estimated 700,000 people in a systematic massacre. This staggering figure exemplifies the lengths to which Khan would go to assert dominance. The slaughter was so extensive that it became legendary, serving as a dire warning to other cities that might consider resisting Mongol rule. Such actions effectively sent ripples of fear across the region, making the notion of rebellion a terrifying prospect for neighboring territories. The philosophy behind these acts of violence was deeply rooted in Genghis Khan's understanding of power dynamics. By annihilating entire populations, he aimed to create a culture of submission. His belief was that if people knew the consequences of defiance could lead to complete destruction, they would be less likely to challenge his authority. In this way, mass slaughter became a tool for governance, allowing him to control vast regions without the need for constant military presence. This strategy was not limited to Merv. After his campaigns, Genghis Khan's army often returned to previously conquered cities, killing any remaining opposition and reinforcing their reputation for brutality. This was a calculated effort to prevent insurgency. The Mongols believed that the terror they instilled would quash any thoughts of rebellion among those who survived. Stories of the massacres would travel far and wide, serving as psychological warfare that would deter others from opposing the Mongol horde. This approach allowed Genghis Khan to concentrate his resources on expansion rather than managing dissent. With the fear of mass execution hanging over their heads, many cities opted for surrender rather than face annihilation. This made it easier for Khan to build his empire, as cities often yielded with little resistance, opting to keep their lives and possessions rather than risking the wrath of the Mongol forces. The tactic of mass slaughter also had implications for how Genghis Khan's empire was perceived in history. While he is often remembered as a fierce warrior and brilliant tactician, these acts of terror have led many historians to grapple with the duality of his legacy. Some view him as a ruthless conqueror, while others argue that his actions were necessary for the creation of a unified Mongol state that ultimately fostered trade and cultural exchange across Asia. The Mongols' use of terror was not without its repercussions. While it successfully subdued many regions in the short term, it also created lasting animosity among the populations that had suffered under their rule. Even after Genghis Khan's death, the memory of these brutal tactics lingered, influencing how future generations would view Mongol conquests. The reputation of being merciless instilled a sense of dread that would echo throughout history. In conclusion, the strategy of mass slaughter and the use of terror as a means of control were critical components of Genghis Khan's military and political strategy. By instilling fear through extreme violence, he was able to create a vast empire with relative ease. The legacy of this brutality remains a complex part of his story, one that illustrates how the quest for power can intertwine with unimaginable acts of violence. Chapter 5. Siege Warfare Innovations. Genghis Khan was not only a brilliant military strategist on the battlefield, he was also an innovator when it came to siege warfare. His mastery of siege tactics and technology played a crucial role in his conquests, allowing him to breach fortified cities that would have been impenetrable to lesser armies. This adaptability and willingness to learn from others set him apart from many of his contemporaries. One of the key innovations that Genghis Khan implemented was the use of advanced siege weapons. particularly those borrowed from the Chinese. Instruments like trebuchets and catapults enabled his forces to hurl projectiles over the walls of cities, effectively breaking through defenses that were previously thought to be unassailable. These weapons allowed the Mongols to turn their relatively mobile armies into formidable siege forces capable of taking down well-fortified strongholds. A notable example of Genghis Khan's siege innovations can be seen during the siege of Beijing. The city was heavily fortified, with towering walls and a large garrison. However, Genghis Khan's forces were undeterred. They employed sophisticated tactics alongside their siege machinery. They first cut off supply routes to the city, effectively starving out the defenders and diminishing their morale. Once the defenders were weakened, the Mongols unleashed their siege engines. The combination of psychological tactics and advanced weaponry led to the rapid collapse of Beijing's defenses. The Mongols were able to breach the walls and capture the city, showcasing their effectiveness in siege warfare. This event not only highlighted Genghis Khan's ingenuity, but also demonstrated his ability to adapt and improve upon existing military technologies. Genghis Khan's approach to siege warfare was characterized by meticulous planning and intelligence gathering. He would often send scouts to assess the defenses of a city and gather information about its vulnerabilities. This attention to detail allowed him to customize his strategies for each siege, maximizing the effectiveness of his forces. The Mongol army was highly disciplined and coordinated, which was crucial during sieges. They operated in units, with specific roles assigned to archers, infantry, and siege engineers. This level of organization made their attacks more efficient and lethal. The ability to rapidly reposition their siege equipment and troops during an assault contributed to their success in capturing fortified cities. The innovations in siege warfare that Genghis Khan introduced not only played a significant role in his campaigns, but also influenced military tactics for generations to come. His methods of using technology and intelligence in warfare were adopted by later armies, shaping the course of military history. Genghis Khan's legacy as a conqueror was not solely based on his battlefield prowess. It was also rooted in his ability to innovate and adapt to the challenges posed by fortified cities. In summary, Genghis Khan's mastery of siege warfare through technological advancements and strategic planning allowed him to conquer some of the most fortified cities of his time. The siege of Beijing serves as a testament to his military ingenuity and adaptability, which were key components of his success in establishing the vast Mongol Empire. Chapter 6. The Ultimate Price for Betrayal. One of the most defining traits of Genghis Khan's leadership was his unwavering stance against betrayal. He believed that loyalty was paramount in maintaining the strength of his empire, and anyone who violated that trust would face severe consequences. A prime example of this was his response to the Khwarezmian Empire after a series of betrayals culminated in the brutal execution of a Mongol trade envoy. In the early 13th century, Genghis Khan sent a group of envoys to the Khwarezmian Empire, aiming to establish trade relations. However, the Khwarezmian governor, suspecting treachery, not only executed the Mongol envoys but also launched an attack against the Mongol territories. This act of betrayal lit a fuse that would lead to devastating consequences for the Khwarezmian Empire. Upon receiving news of this affront, Genghis Khan's response was immediate and ruthless. He mobilized a vast army, fueled by a desire for retribution, and set out to decimate the Khwarezmian forces. Over the course of the campaign, he employed his well-known tactics of psychological warfare, siege innovations, and battlefield strategies to crush any opposition. One of the most notable battles during this campaign was the Battle of Bukhara, where Genghis Khan's forces laid siege to the city. After capturing Bukhara, he famously told the city's defenders that their actions had brought about their own destruction. The message was clear: betrayal would not go unpunished. He ordered mass executions and the brutal treatment of the city's inhabitants as a direct response to their governor's actions. Following the fall of Bukhara, Genghis Khan continued his assault, ultimately leading to the destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire. The city of Samarkand also fell victim to his wrath, as Genghis Khan's forces executed thousands, destroying the very fabric of the empire. This campaign showcased not just his military might, but also his belief in the importance of loyalty. Genghis Khan's approach to handling betrayal was a brutal reminder that those who chose to deceive him would pay the ultimate price. In the aftermath, Genghis Khan effectively obliterated the Khwarezmian Empire, demonstrating that betrayal led to utter destruction. This incident served as a powerful warning to all potential enemies and allies alike. Loyalty was not just appreciated, but essential for survival in the vast and dangerous world of Mongol conquests. It was a message that reverberated throughout the territories he controlled and instilled fear in those who might contemplate defying him. Through this brutal example, Genghis Khan solidified his reputation as a leader who did not tolerate betrayal. His fierce retaliation against the Khwarezmian Empire served as a testament to his strategic mind and ruthless efficiency, ensuring that his empire would remain intact through unwavering loyalty from those who served him. We've delved into the ruthless strategies Genghis Khan used to establish his empire. From psychological warfare that instilled fear to his infamous feigned retreats, each tactic was meticulously designed for maximum impact. We also touched on the chilling mass slaughter that maintained control and his innovative use of siege technology to conquer fortified cities. Genghis Khan's approach was a masterclass in blending terror with strategic military acumen, allowing him to dominate vast territories. Now, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which tactic struck you as the most terrifying? Share your views in the comments, and if you enjoyed this exploration of historical military strategies, don't forget to subscribe for more insightful